I'm Tracy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome again this week. We've got with us two Stephs, Steph and Steve. Very cute. That's probably how they were attracted to each other.
Yeah.
And they've also got with them, if you're watching this, beautiful little Isabel, who's 6 weeks old. So they're right in the throes of early parenting. And here they are on a podcast, which in itself is very impressive. Now, I love this couple because they had a few things come in from left field at the end of their pregnancy. And I was on the phone to them a couple of times, and I really had huge compassion for what it was that they were going through. And these sorts of stories can teach us so much. So let's welcome them both. Thank you for coming.
Hi, thanks for
Hey,
having us.
It's lovely to have a dad on as well. So, how are you feeling, Steph, in your pregnancy? And we'll talk about your preparation as well, what you did to get
Yeah,
prepared.
I think it's worth noting as well that this was not our first pregnancy. So Isabel's actually our third pregnancy, and we did have some recurrent pregnancy loss beforehand. So I just
Wow.
wanted to preface with that I think that's also part of our story and our journey, and it did play a big role in how we felt throughout the pregnancy.
Yeah.
Overall, it was a really great pregnancy in terms of symptoms and things like that. It was very straightforward in terms of health wise. But yes, as you said, Tracy, it kind of all went a bit left of field towards the end. I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes at around 28 weeks pregnant, but I was right on the cutoff. So, and since that time, the levels have now changed. So if I was to be pregnant again now, I actually wouldn't have been diagnosed because they've
Mm.
changed the threshold. So yeah, so that did come up at 28 weeks, which again sort of plays into the story as what happened
Yeah.
later on
Yeah.
at 9 weeks.
They've
Yeah,
moved the goalposts. In fact, they keep moving the goalposts, and
yeah.
it can feel very what's the word, nebulous around what these scores are and what they actually mean. And I think it always helps if you look at an individual pregnancy rather than just some type of measurement criteria that, may not really be giving an indication of risk depending on the person. So
Mm.
very easy to get caught in that bucket and then as a result of that get led down a particular path. Were you given your history, Steph?
Mm.
How are you feeling emotionally about your pregnancy in that space?
I think for me, or I think maybe for both of us, but for me especially, it took me a really long time to, I think, uh, feel comfortable that this pregnancy was going to happen. I think we
Yeah.
needed those really, the first trimester ultrasounds were really kind of like, once we get through this ultrasound, then it's the next one, and then it's the next one. And when we get to viability weeks, it was almost like I had a lot of hurdles to jump through until I felt comfortable.
yeah, we had a lot of, I suppose, fear probably a bit deeper down that maybe this pregnancy wouldn't work out as well, which meant that while we were optimistic, we were also very cautiously optimistic, which
Mm.
almost meant that the pregnancy itself, I don't know if this is right, but it almost didn't feel real, like it didn't really sink in until we got to those viability weeks. So I think
Mm.
at the 12-week scan was the first time when we were like, wow, this actually looks like, you know,
Yeah.
things may be going well, but still at that
Mm.
point we were very cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
But then when we got to that 20-week point, that's when things started to really sink in to go, we actually may
Mm.
be lucky enough to have this baby.
Yeah.
But I think up until that 20-week point, I think we were still quite reserved in how we felt.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
I just want to talk to that a little bit. It's very
Mm.
difficult when people have gone through loss to know
Mm.
how to be with the next pregnancy and they hold back from getting too excited because nobody can say, oh, it's going to be fine this time. You just don't know.
Mm.
But what I try to say to people in that situation is one of the things you don't want to do in the pregnancy is have dark filters of fear around loss, because here's the thing about fear of loss. it comes with the territory. If you think that fear is going to disappear when baby lands or becomes viable or however you want to put it, it's not the case. It doesn't matter, even when babies land, in fact, we get more invested than ever. And fear of loss is part of, what it is to love. Whenever you love, there's always that fear of loss, whether it be your parents, your siblings, your good friends, and our precious, precious babies. I think they're the biggest fear of loss, is losing a child. But you want to live with that fear front and center like dark glasses, because that's going to actually influence every thought, word, feeling. And I often say to my couples in that situation, you want to marinate your baby with love. Yeah, cook your baby in love juices, not fear juices.
It's funny to say that, Tracy. Sorry
Yeah. No, please.
to say, when we started getting to that point, between that 12 and 20 week mark where we started feeling a little bit better, we actually purposely, we spoke about it a lot more, and we made a purposeful decision to be like, let's actually enjoy this pregnancy. Let's start doing things that are more positive. Let's start getting her room ready, and all of those things that I suppose help manifest that like optimism we started doing, because we didn't want to be stuck in that negative mindset of, oh, what if this doesn't work out? Like, we don't want that to happen again. So you're totally right. It's very important to be in that positive mindset, because God forbid, even if it didn't work out, the pregnancy is still a pregnancy, and it's still an amazing experience, no matter how long it goes on for. So
that's right.
Well said, Steve. I love that you've said that. We want to, however long our children are here, we want to surround them with love. And that's easier said than done. I really want to acknowledge anybody listening to this who have gone through loss. It's a shit of a thing to go through. But here's the thing: every child, the minute you're pregnant, that's a child in your consciousness. And however long they're here, we want to give them the best life we can. So thank you for talking to that, because it's often the pink elephant in the room is fear of loss, and it doesn't matter how early or late it is, it's always still felt as a loss. So, okay, so you had this pregnancy that started to, bring in more optimism, which is wonderful. How did you two prepare, and what sort of a difference that made?
So I guess one of our earliest preparations was, we've actually been seeing a psychologist for quite a few years together, and she was fantastic. So she addressed a lot of the anxiety that we both had around trying again and all those sorts of things. But so she was one of the biggest helps in our preparation. I think mental health is so important going into pregnancy and parenthood. We obviously did the Transform Your Birth course one weekend, that we both got a lot out of that. And I know Steve got so much.
I got so much out of it. It was really great, Tracy, and kudos to you for tailoring it. Like, going into it, I thought that maybe there wouldn't be as much for me in there as there would be for, the traditional birthing partner, but there was actually equal parts, if not more, for me. Actually, it was really great. So that was fantastic ways for us to prepare, and kind of was that platform for us to then level up our game and our knowledge, and then go out and explore other things that we needed to find out, whether it was particular policies at the hospitals, or kind of specifically what certain things meant in pregnancy. So I think we also went away and did our own research privately, in kind of whatever way that was like.
I also found listening to this podcast really helpful. It was really nice to hear other birth stories, and I actually had a friend who did this podcast as well, so I listened to her birth story, so that was great. And I also listened to another podcast called The Great Birth Rebellion. I found that one really helpful, especially around the different tests that are offered in pregnancy, and the different, I think, the different things that kind of come up, which again, later on in the pregnancy actually served us very well, because we'd gone out and informed ourselves about those trickier topics that come up.
That's a great little hint there, and I'll tell you why. Because your health professionals are always going to make decisions based on policy within a hospital. Actually, not always. Some of them realise the policy isn't relevant, but others go by the book. Those policies may or may not be up to date.
Mm.
And they say it takes many, many years, at least over a decade, for evidence to become practice. So, what's good about the Great Birth Rebellion is it's more current. And I know, and I'm sure the doctors and midwives probably get the shits about this sometimes, where people come up and saying, well, actually, the latest evidence suggests, and it's they've been able to get that from a fairly trusted source through the Great Birth Rebellion. So it is helpful when you are informed, because even though things are being offered based on a risk analysis or assessment, it doesn't always mean that's the best way pathway for you. So being informed is really good. And in the Transform Your Birth course, we actually give you very clear questions to ask your health providers prior to the day, so you know what the landscape is and how you can identify the difference between a medical necessity and a choice, and play well within that system, always respectfully, though, to your caregivers as well. So you had a bit of a change doing the course, and also really getting out there and getting the layout of the land. How did that change the way you felt emotionally? Both of you, actually, Steve or Steph?
I'll go first. So for me, one of the challenges that I really found was, while it was great being empowered and having this information, I found it was very easy to get overwhelmed
Yeah.
With information that's out there in open source, or even just through the hospital itself. And as you know, Tracy, as well, there's a lot of either misinformation out there or conflicting information. So
Yeah.
it was actually quite challenging, I found, from my personal perspective. Um, it was almost like information was being fed from so many different avenues. Sometimes they were conflicting, and it was hard to know like what is actually correct.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it was really important, at least for my preparation, was to do my own research and apply what I thought was most practical in our specific case in our pregnancy.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, we got so much advice from different people as well. And again, as you know, everyone's got different advice. Every pregnancy and baby are completely different. So it's about picking and choosing what's right for you. But for me, it was quite challenging having so much information coming at me from lots of different directions, where I felt somewhat overwhelmed at points, and I kind of needed to go away and do my own research in my own time when I didn't feel overwhelmed with that, to be able to pick out what I needed.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. The path can be a bit treacherous, can't it? What about you, Steph?
I found that, yeah, so I guess all the research, I think looking back in pregnancy in those early weeks before things kind of took a turn, I found that I was actually avoiding a lot of those topics that scared me. So things like cesarean and things like induction, and I was like, oh, I don't really want to know about that yet, just because it kind of made it feel a bit too real. But eventually, as things kind of went on, and I had, like I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and a few other things that came up later in pregnancy, and I did sort of do my own research and listen to the Great Birth Rebellion, I realized something. I guess when you're faced with these different things you've never been faced with before, you don't really know what you would do until you're in that situation.
Yeah.
And for me, I realized I had more of a risk tolerance than I thought, which I guess we can talk to later. But yeah, like these sort of things would come up, and this information would come up, and the different, for example, induction, like the different methods of induction. And I just really had to go, okay, well, if this was happening to me, what would I feel comfortable with? And it really solidified for me coming back to my intuition. And I think that's something that came like into play around the birth, was how, for me, intuition was a big thing. So kind of what Steve was saying, I think that's also what happened to you, was, yeah, we were fed a lot of different opinions, information towards the end, and there was a lot of different avenues of what we could do or what people thought we should do, and everyone we spoke to, including family, sort of gave us their 2 cents of what they thought we should do. But what we really needed to do as a couple was just block out the noise, sit down together and talk it through, or not even talk it through, just sit with whatever was going on and just think, okay, how does this make me feel, like in a spiritual way, in an emotional way, in a physical way, whatever it might be. And for me, I found that I actually, like it was a really important thing for me to just go, how does this make me feel in my body, and listen to that compass in a way.
Oh, I love that you've brought this up. This is one of my favorite topics, as you know, because I was talking to you guys around that time when you had a lot of noise. And we can make a lot of decisions from that place of mind and research and thinking and all of that. But there's a much deeper, more profound intelligence to the system, and it's in the body. And our bodies know things that we don't always are, we're not always aware of consciously. And more, I'm guiding both in pregnancy and parenting more than anything, is helping people to just look inward and sense and feel into another part of their brain and their mind of what feels right in this situation. And I love that you went down that track. So I think it's time we just get into the story, Steph, because it's a pretty decent one. Okay. So either one of you, let's start with when things started to go off the normal track.
Yeah. Oh, I can start. I'm sure we'll chip in. Steve will chip in. It was so I guess week 38 of pregnancy, I'd sort of been having what felt like something was stuck in my ear. Like I had a bit of a blockage in my ear, and I didn't think too much of it. I didn't go to the doctor. I just thought, oh, this is a bit strange. And it kind of hung around for a few days. And then going into week 39 of pregnancy, I was having neck and shoulder pain on the same right side. So there's my right ear, right side of my neck and shoulder pain. And I was just putting it down to, oh, I'm sleeping funny. I'm end of pregnancy uncomfortable. I'm obviously, like, my neck is a bit crooked. I even got online and ordered a new pillow because I thought it was my pillow that was doing it to me. And I sort of got to the end of the week and it hadn't gotten better.
I think you had a headache as well.
Well, the headache was sort of, my neck and shoulder. Sort of back of my head. It wasn't, because as soon as you mention headache in pregnancy, like alarm bells go off. So it was, it wasn't the traditional headache that was what hospitals would have been concerned over. It was more muscular. And so anyway, I thought I should be good and I should call the hospital and let them know that I've been in this pain for a few days. And, sure enough, they told me to come in. It was a Friday night, and I was 38 and I think 6 days pregnant. And we went into hospital and they did the CTG monitoring and they checked my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was through the roof. I can't remember exactly.
Was so just the day before, so this was the Friday night that we went in. The day before we had our regular midwife appointment, and everything was normal. Steph's blood pressure was fine. Like, there was no concerns whatsoever, really. So on the Friday, we more so just went in as a precaution, thinking, oh, maybe they'll, be like, oh, maybe try this medication or massage or something like that. Just something very simple.
Take Panadol.
Yeah.
You just, I think, like, I was just at that point where I was like, I should be good. I shouldn't, just suffer through at home or whatever. I wasn't in that much pain, but I thought I should do the right thing. And so immediately the blood pressure thing concerned them. And they also did a blood test and a urine sample. So essentially they were screening me for preeclampsia.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, we were told, oh, stay overnight. We'll put you on some blood pressure medication and we'll monitor you overnight. And if you respond well, you can go home in the morning. So that's what we did, stayed overnight. My blood pressure did come back down with the blood pressure medication overnight. And I think they gave me Panadol or something for the ache in my shoulder, and that did subside a little bit. But we were sent home in the morning, Saturday morning, and we were told, this isn't preeclampsia. You're responding well to the medication. It's obviously just musculoskeletal aches and pains. So I thought, great, fantastic.
And maybe the blood pressure had something to do with just being stressed in a hospital environment or something like that.
Yeah, and, also late stage pregnancy, it is quite normal for blood pressure to escalate a little bit as well. So we were sent home Saturday morning, and then we came home and we were just carrying on our normal, it's a week till baby's due date, how exciting. And then Sunday morning, I woke up with, I remember Steve was in the shower and I woke up and I went to grab my drink bottle that has a straw and I went to drink through the straw and I couldn't suck. And I thought, that's weird, like what's going on? And I went and had a look in the bathroom mirror and the right side of my face was completely paralyzed. So that was pretty scary.
Yeah.
And we thought I'd had some sort of stroke overnight. So of course we rang the hospital back, rang the midwife, and she said, come straight to hospital. Like, this is not okay. Yeah, it's urgent. Come in as soon as you can. Go straight to emergency, which is what we did. And luckily there was a doctor in emergency who was also an obstetrician. So she was great at looking at things from pregnancy as well as the emergent care that I needed. And she was pretty quick in diagnosing that I had Bell's palsy, which I'd never heard of and we'd never heard of. But apparently is very common in late stage pregnancy. And since I've had it, I've told friends and family about it, and so many people have come out of the woodwork saying, oh, I knew someone who had that in pregnancy. And so that was a relief that I hadn't had a stroke. But at the same time, I thought, well, what is Bell's palsy? How long will it last? What does it mean?
And is it associated with the pregnancy, or is it just something viral that can be picked up? Because people also get it that aren't pregnant, of course. And I think what had happened was that doctor who diagnosed me said that the ear and shoulder ache that I'd had the week before was most likely a viral infection that had then inflamed the nerve in my face, and then that's how the Bell's palsy kind of came along.
Right.
So, and then again, my blood pressure was still quite high. So I just sort of had these things amounting: blood pressure, Bell's palsy. We were taken up to maternity after the ED, just to sort of chat with another obstetrician on duty, and that's when induction was kind of put on the table, because I was now officially 39 weeks, or just over 39 weeks. Some obstetricians really love to induce people at that time because, you know, there's some studies out there that say that it's the optimal time for people to have a baby at 39 weeks, you know. And I just knew that this, for me personally, like, wasn't right. I didn't feel comfortable being induced. Yes, the Bell's palsy was really a shock and everything, but I wasn't ready to give birth because of that. We kind of, we sort of were like, oh, you know, if things are okay, you know, let's just see how we go. And I was also only 6 days away from her due date anyway, so I kind of didn't see the urgency at that point. So the blood pressure was still an issue. They ended up putting me on blood pressure medication, medication for Bell's palsy. So at this point in time, I think I was on something like 24 tablets a day for different things. Wow. They'd also picked up that I had a UTI, which was not, I didn't know about, because in pregnancy, you know, everything's kind of masked by the pregnancy, so you don't really have symptoms of things.
And with that UTI, can bring on protein in the urine, which was another thing
indicator of
screened, but also another indicator. So we're starting to get all of these indicators piling up of like, hey, this may be preeclampsia.
But then it's also, it could be the UTI, or it could be, you know, it could be a symptom of the medication you're on, because the medication for Bell's palsy also spikes your blood pressure. Yeah. But then the blood pressure some medication I was on also was doing weird things to my sugars because I had GD. So it was kind of like this whole cocktail of stuff I was on.
So can I come in there?
Yeah.
I can remember we had a call together, and what Steph and Steve have described is a whole lot of moving parts around what could be the cause of XYZ and what is the best process moving forward. And these are the situations people can find themselves in, where you're getting all of this information and then a doctor says, okay, well, because of this, we need to do X. And Steph describes very clearly that to induce just didn't feel right at this point in the process. And one of the things we talked about when we were on the phone together, because I never give medical advice, but I was very much trying to help you to understand the layout of the land, but also to tune in about what felt right for you now. Can you just share a little bit about, because you alluded to it earlier, and these are the sorts of situations people can find themselves in where you had to, on some level, block out a bit of the noise and tune in to what felt right for you. Can you talk about how that shifted for you, Steph?
Yeah, so I guess the biggest thing that I was going off was Isabel and how she was inside me. And I felt that I just felt intuitively that she was okay.
Yeah.
And everyone around us was really worried about her and obviously worried about me. But I could still feel her moving. I just felt like it was just a little bit over the top, the responses we were getting for things.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't want to, if anyone else is in a situation and this was happening to them, I wouldn't want them to not take doctor's advice if that's what they felt they needed to do. But for me personally, I felt like it was just a little bit over the top. We were also getting, because we went through public hospital, there was a different doctor on every day, and we were actually told to come in every day until I gave birth for CTG, daily CTG monitoring of Isabel and my daily blood pressure. So every day we were going to the hospital. There's a different doctor on, and we were getting different advice. And we found that some of the more experienced obstetricians who had, say, been working for 40, 30 years or so, they were very relaxed. And they're like, oh, this is fine. You're going to be okay. You know, no need to interfere where we're not needed. And then I found that some of the, younger or student obstetricians were very, very risk adverse and so I found that for me, I think we spoke about this, Tracy, where I think we spoke about how obstetricians are human at the end of the day. And I think it didn't, I think because no one else around me could really make a decision or give me an answer that was consistent. And we were told, we'd go home from hospital like, oh, no, you don't have preeclampsia. And then I'd get a call saying, actually, you do have preeclampsia because your blood test results came back. And so it was an up and down roller coaster. It was just an awful, awful week. So I think we just really had to come back to for me, it was how am I feeling? And I felt okay. And I was, my blood pressure was being managed on the medication. Aside from the Bell's palsy, which was annoying, I felt physically okay, and I felt that Isabel was okay. And that her heart rate and everything on the CTG was perfect.
Yeah, she appeared fine. And the other thing that did pop up that was a little bit
we didn't ask.
Alarming was so we through some of the ultrasounds they were finding that the fluid levels were on the lower end of normal. And again, want to reinforce that it was still in the normal range, but it was the lower end. And again, that was another symptom of potentially preeclampsia. And hey, maybe we should consider getting this baby out. So we actually decided to go to
get another formal scan.
To get a formal scan done for our own peace of mind and to again help us build that picture so that we could feel emotionally safe in making the correct decision for us. So we actually went and ended up getting a formal scan done. And that formal scan showed that things were in the normal range, but essentially, like
her stomach.
Her stomach had significantly reduced in size, which was a sign that, maybe we should look at getting her out at some point. If she doesn't come out, naturally, we should look at maybe the induction as soon as possible. So that was almost the last piece of the puzzle for us to be like, okay, she's potentially beginning to get to that point where she could be at risk. Now we've built our own.
Yeah. We just needed more information. Yeah. I think for us, we just needed more information that made sense to us.
So all of the advice that we can get when we're pregnant around this, and the reminder that these people are doing the best they can with the knowledge that they have and the understanding that they have. Not always, though, tuning into the intelligence of the woman, and her knowledge of her body and her sense of the baby as well. And I would encourage all people to tune into that stuff when trying to work out what's the best decision moving forward. And given your history of loss, of course, the baby is always paramount in these decisions, and we acknowledge that. But here's the thing. To intervene too quickly can also put the baby at risk. And that's often what gets lost, particularly in things like inductions. It's not, a decision to be made lightly, but I love that both of you, and I remember working with you through that time, you really more and more had a sense of what needed to happen. Every time I spoke to you, it was like, yeah, you're onto this. You guys are good. So how about you share now how the birth unfolded?
Yeah. So I have to say, it was such an incredible experience. Steve might say otherwise.
No, it was an incredible experience.
He didn't have the hormones like I did, but I actually went into spontaneous labor, which was amazing. Because induction, we actually agreed to be induced on Monday the 7th of July, which actually was the day, oh God, it was actually the day that she was born. So given that all of these things came back, that Isabel had lower fluid in her, the amniotic sac had lower fluid, and she had a smaller stomach, we were like, okay, we'll agree to an induction. I was booked in to go in. I did opt for a cervical sweep on the Friday, just to sort of see if things could happen. And the positive thing was that my body was actually already showing signs that it was ready to go into labour. So I was already dilating naturally. I opted for the cervical sweep, just to sort of, help things along a little bit, because I wanted to do everything that was within my power to go into labour and not have to have the induction.
How did the sensation start? Tell us about that.
Yeah. It was funny. So I went into labour on the Saturday night early Saturday morning, at about 3 a.m. and it just felt like period cramps. And that's when I knew, because I'd been having Braxton Hicks for a very long time throughout the pregnancy, probably since the second trimester. But these ones actually had a bit of pain associated. I wouldn't say pain, it was more just like period cramping. And I was actually having those on and off all Saturday, early Saturday morning from 3 a.m. throughout the night. And then they sort of went away as the sun came up. So I've heard that was quite normal for women to labour at night. And I knew that was part of evolution. So that was pretty cool to experience, some early labour during the night, and then during the day I would still get them, but they were maybe like one every 30 minutes or so. So then we kind of just went with that, because we knew we were going in for an induction on the Monday. We didn't want to tell family that, because we didn't want family to be freaking out, but we were kind of being a bit coy and saying, baby's probably going to come kind of soon. We got my dad to come and pick up the dog, and Steve's mum came and brought us dinner and things like that, just to sort of make our lives a bit easier. But all the while I was in labour while they were here. And then sort of Saturday night, Saturday evening, the contractions came back, and they were quite strong. And I remember something that I learned from your course, Tracy, was so my birth preferences was to try everything in terms of managing the sensations. So I had things like a TENS machine, I wanted to use the shower, I wanted the bath, I wanted the acupressure, I wanted, the birth combs, I had a yoga ball, so I had all the things ready to go. And I did that on the Saturday evening, and Steve was in bed, and it got to a point at about 1 a.m. where I thought, no, I need Steve's support now, I need to wake him up. And so I woke Steve up, and I was in the shower. I found the shower to be the best thing, actually. And I think I collectively was in the shower for maybe over 24 hours throughout labour.
You're going to get the dirtiest, biggest water bill.
Well, this was...
so it was at the hospital.
It was at the hospital.
Oh, that's even better.
Don't worry, we'll pay for it with our rates, I'm sure. But yeah, so it got to a point where and it was actually, I really loved feeling the sensations of the contractions, because throughout also pregnancy, I was doing prenatal yoga. And we were taught to visualize the contractions as like walking up a hill and like climbing the hill, getting to the top of the hill and climbing back down. So I really loved that. And so, yeah, so I got Steve up to kind of help me. And again, I must labor really well at night because the contractions were like thick and fast.
Yeah, she was having 3 within 10 minutes or so.
Wow.
And they were picking up, they were quite intense. So
we thought they were intense.
Well, at that time we thought that they were intense. But we
They
actually
were intense. Do not diminish those contractions.
Oh, I know. But yeah, so and of course, like this after my first labour, so I was like, oh, you know, and Steve's going, well, you know, the hospital said call when they're 3 and 10 and, you know, come in. And so that's what you did.
Yeah, so we did that. We called them and they essentially said, yep, if that's kind of how you're looking, then think about coming in the next hour or so, which is kind of what we did.
Yeah, we went in and then I think they were having a quiet night, which was, they were very happy to accommodate for us. So we got in there at about 2:30 in the morning, I think on early Sunday morning. And I was in the bathtub and that was lovely. And, you know, like we had the quiet music, we had the nice music on, we had the essential oils going. And sure enough, the sun came up and yeah, my labour slowed down.
We felt like frauds because we're at the hospital at this point and we're in a birth suite and her like contractions are really. I felt like a fraud. Like
yeah.
I was like, I swear they were 3 and 10.
Yeah, but also I think what had happened for me psychologically, which is a bit of a shame, was because I was going in for that daily monitoring at the hospital and I knew there was this induction booked in on the Monday and we're actually meant to go into the hospital on the Sunday for another CTG at like 8 a.m. So they were already expecting me at the hospital anyway. So I think psychologically the hospital didn't feel as safe as it had done.
Yeah.
And so I think I knew with the shift change, I knew with the sun coming up, I knew there would be obstetricians coming. And sure enough, as soon as it got to 8 a.m. or whatever it was, my contractions slowed and the doctors came in and they stopped altogether. So that was a big eye opener for me of, you know, and I guess when we get to the day that I did give birth, I knew what I needed in order to labour well, and that was space and time and privacy, and I needed as little medical people in the room as possible. I just needed Steve, really. That's the only person I really needed. So we were sent home.
Can I come in on that? We can understand. Ask any vet or anybody who's worked with animals through birth, and they'll describe very similar behaviours to what Steph is sharing with us now, where when women are observed, when they're under time pressures, when the sun comes up, they feel more exposed. The body says, yeah, no, you're not safe, and can do that sort of stuff. And it's even beyond our conscious awareness. It's just it's almost like a reflex in the body. It's a protection. And some women are particularly sensitive to those sorts of signals within the body. I remember working with a woman in labour who we just couldn't go anywhere near her. It'd stop her labour. So the midwife locked her in the bathroom with her partner, turned off the light and put him in the bath, and we all just went out into the living room and we could hear her labouring, and she was progressing so much more in that environment than with all of us there. So it is a very natural thing for that to happen. So you went home. Did it kick off again?
It didn't. It was sort of, well, when I got home, when I was at home, I felt safe again. So they did come back home, but it wasn't full on. And the conditions, I guess I felt like we were being given conditions now at this point at the hospital was, we're happy to send you home, but you have to come back tonight for more CTG, more monitoring, more blood pressure.
How to get in the way of a labour.
Yeah.
Time pressures on women.
It was awful. Yeah. It was awful. And because I was booked in for the induction the following morning, they wanted to insert a balloon in the morning.
You're already in labour.
It was already, I know. But they still wanted to, like kick things off even more, essentially. So we were sent home, but we were told, come back at 8 p.m, we'll get you in to stay overnight, and then we'll kick off the induction in the morning, depending on what you're doing. It's okay, I'll just pop my... Yeah, I know, we're talking very loud. It's annoying you. We're talking about you. We're talking about how you came here. So yeah, so we came home. I think we should preface, we were exhausted by this point. You know,
Would
we'd
have
been
been.
going through over a week of this, you know, blood pressure, Bell's palsy, daily CTG. We weren't sleeping. We also were having, yeah, we had phone calls with you, Tracy. We also had phone calls with our psychologist
Yeah.
as well, which was amazing. But we were exhausted.
Yeah.
And so by the time the labor actually started, we were exhausted. And so I think when I got home, I was just so upset and, you know, like I was crying. No. I was just very upset, and it wasn't the way that I'd sort of imagined her coming into the world. I felt, like you said, very pressured, time crunch, and almost like my body had to perform in a way, otherwise the intervention would happen. And so anyway, we went home, and I think we both just kind of were like, all right, we'll go in, we'll stay overnight, it's happening in the morning kind of thing. And I just remember, like, that drive back to the hospital, I think I just cried because it was just, we were so overwhelmed and exhausted. But anyway, so we got back to the hospital at 8 o'clock. They did more CTG. Isabel was fine. My blood pressure was okay on the medication, but I actually was still in labor. Like, I went back into labor at hospital, but they didn't put us in a birth suite. They put us in one of the recovery rooms. So it was like just a bed and a bathroom, and there wasn't anything comfortable. And the midwife said to me, you know, I know you're having, you know, contractions, but you're being induced in the morning. Try and get as much rest as you can. Don't do anything to labor overnight. Just rest. And that was the hardest thing to do. I could not rest because my body was like labor, you know. So it got to a point where I got in the shower. That wasn't helping. I was just saying to Steve, I'm so uncomfortable. I'm so uncomfortable. I need to get out of this room. I need to get out of this room. And you actually went out.
We even opted for the gaps at that point, which is
To
something
help
we
me
didn't
sleep.
really
Yeah.
consider before that. But Steph was in so much discomfort for an extended period. Just being in that room and that environment just wasn't conducive of resting, let alone, you know, labor.
Yeah.
So we opted for the gaps, and even that wasn't really doing anything. And then it got to somewhere in the very early hours of the morning, and I just went out and said to one of the midwives, look, she's in active labor, she can't rest. If we're expecting to go through an induction or a birth of some sort, you know, the following day, we need to get some rest, and this environment here is not appropriate. Can you please see if there's a birth room at least available so we can utilize some of the things like the bath, a bit more space around, that sort of thing? And they were very receptive of that, and they moved us into one of the birth rooms, which was great.
Yeah.
And then things kind of picked up from that point.
Yeah. Once I was in that room, I spoke to the midwife and I told her, I've been in labor since like 3 a.m. early Saturday.
Like 48 hours.
You know, it had been 2 days at that point. And I said, it keeps stopping. And I said to her, I'm meant to be being induced at 8 a.m. this morning. I said, I don't want that if I can stop that from happening. And I told her at the shift change, can you please, like, don't let the doctors in to see me. I said, if this is all happening, please don't, you know, please don't let the doctors in, or, like, you know, if they come in, please, like, you know, it's discreet. It's not, you know, they can talk to Steve, don't talk to me, because I don't want this labor to stall. And she was fantastic, and she said, absolutely. And then she gave me a few options of, you know, how about I give you a exam to see how dilated you are. And because, yeah, obviously with the balloon, that only dilates you to a certain point, and then there's no point of doing that if you're over that stage. And she said, and while I'm doing the exam, I can sneakily break your waters to sort of help things go along, because I think the plan was to break my waters at about 8 or 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. or something. But she said, if I do it now or soon, it gives you a few more hours to get going a bit more, and that way the doctors will be happy to let you go. And at that point in time, I was like, I never really wanted anyone to break my waters, but I would rather it in this scenario than in that scenario later on in a few hours time. So I agreed to that. So she did the exam, and I was already 4 or 5 centimeters which was a really good boost for us.
Yeah.
You know, because we'd been stalling, it'd been going on for so long. I think just having that information was great. So she did that. She did break the waters, and from that point on, it was just like all full steam ahead with the labor. And I was in the shower for probably like a good 12 hours. And I found the shower and the you doing the pressure on my lower back.
The counter pressure that you taught us, and some of those techniques like the massage technique, just the pressure, those sort of things, they were really helpful tools during that time.
So so it was really good. And the thing though was, because of all of the stress that the doctors had about Isabel and myself, they said, we're happy for you to labour in the shower, but in order for us to sign off on it, you need to be hooked up to the CTG. So I thought, okay, I really want the shower. The shower's amazing. I'll agree to the CTG. I didn't quite feel comfortable with the clip on Isabel's head. So I did go with the CTG, but that in itself also was a bit stressful. Steve had to hold the monitor.
Yeah, one of the monitors on the bottom under Steph's belly was picking up her heart rate rather than Isabel's, which caused concern. So it meant for probably a good 4 hours or so, I had to physically bend down and whatever position Steph was in, and press that monitor into her stomach, which was challenging. And any time it disconnected, it would beep, and the monitor was right in front of us. So just things like that brought in that medical environment back into where we wanted that kind of natural safety. There was just those little things that were a little bit challenging for us.
So then we got to a point where I utilised all the tools, like the shower, the bath, the acupressure, all the things that I wanted to do, and I just couldn't find comfort anymore. And I remember you talking in your course about finding comfort, and Steve did ask the midwife to come in and help, and she did some spinning babies exercises because Isabel was posterior, which also meant that it was a lot more, I guess the intensity was a lot more than I was expecting. But it got to a point where we were so exhausted. We'd been going now for 60 hours in total, that I just got to a point where I was like, it's time to ask for some help. And I saw it as a way, because I could see Steve was really tired, and he was doing his best to support me, but he was exhausted. I was exhausted. So I ended up asking for the epidural, which I didn't think I wanted. It wasn't on my birth preference list, but I knew from your course that it was, a tool in the toolbox. And I felt very confident and happy with getting it, because I'd done everything I wanted to do. Exhausted all those options, and I was so tired. I just wanted to lie down. And the only way to comfortably lie down was to do that. So we did that, and that was great, because it meant we got to have a bit of a rest before she was born. We got to have dinner, got to have a chat, got to reconnect. So it was actually a great tool for us.
Beautiful.
And 2 hours after the epidural, I was 10 centimetres dilated and ready to push. And I was pushing for 2 hours. And I guess what had happened was I was pushing great. They were saying that I was, my technique of pushing was fantastic. She was in a great position. But my pelvis, where she had to come down and out, they were saying like come around the corner or come down the bend or something, she was getting stuck. And they brought in another obstetrician to kind of have a look at what was going on. And it was actually the shape of my pelvis that wasn't letting her through. So apparently, it's meant to be like a circle shape, and mine's more of like a heart shape. So her little head kept getting stuck. So that's when the obstetricians were like, we're going to have to change, our strategy here. We're going to have to look at either a cesarean or an instrumental birth, but we can't make that decision until we're in theatre. And at that point in time, I personally was like, well, I've done everything that I wanted to do. I've tried everything I wanted to. I can't change the shape of my pelvis. This is one thing that I don't have control over. And I think I just got to that point of just that letting go of,
Mm.
control, letting go of things that I can't control. I've done everything in my power. I've got to experience labor for many days. And so they took us to theatre, and that's where they sort of, you know, had a look at what was going on, and they said the safest way to get her out was through cesarean. So that's what it ended up being.
Yeah. And they did that, and it was a great experience. It was
Yeah.
really,
it was
really
very
good.
positive.
And we kept her in our mind the whole time. You know, we were thinking,
Yeah.
you know, every contraction or every minute that goes by, like we're getting closer to meeting her. So when we went in for the cesarean, Steph's mindset was solid all the way through. It was fantastic,
Wow.
but particularly when we were basically told that cesarean is going to be what needs to happen, Steph's mindset shifted dramatically, and she was almost like really, really positive and excited, which is interesting because pre-labor and even considering a cesarean, she was not there before. So it was really cool to see her flip that mindset, have little Isabel in the front of her mind to be like, you know, we get to meet her in whatever way.
This is the way that she's going to be born. Yeah.
And it was a great experience. So yeah,
Wow.
it was great. Yeah.
You know, I love how you've kind of finished this off in that we can think, oh, you know, you've had to go through all of that just to get a cesarean. It's a shame you didn't just get a cesarean, and that's what a lot of people, where they'll go with their mind. However, the process of labour in itself prepares both mum and baby for life outside the womb, but it can also help feed the mum's sense of capability and ability to overcome, which is going to be very useful on the other side. So as you look back at that now, Steph, are you glad you went through all that?
Oh, absolutely. I've told my birth story to many friends and family, and I met with shocked faces and like, oh my God, you poor thing, I can't believe you went through that. And I say, no, I loved it. Like it was such an amazing experience. I'm so glad we went through it. I'm so glad we advocated for ourselves the whole way through.
Yeah.
Yes, cesarean is not the easy way out. It's definitely not. It's a huge major surgery, but I loved every minute of it. And even, it was, I guess, more of a complicated surgery as well. There were a few complications with it, but the whole time we felt so safe, and everyone who was in the room with us made it such a special time. And it was like we had a little party for her when she was born with like all these doctors in the rooms. And I think that was the best thing, was that she came out so healthy.
Yeah.
And everyone was so concerned that she wouldn't, and the fact that she did, it just reinforced to me that my intuition, like I knew she was going to be healthy, and that just showed, when she was, that was something that was really important for me, and helped. Yeah.
What do you think it was about the way both of you managed that enabled you to get through what others would consider like a long, hard labour and then ending in a cesarean? What do you think it was about, and I'll hear from both of you, that enabled you to get through that?
Well, I think first and foremost, the biggest thing for us throughout the pregnancy, the labor, postpartum, everything has been Steph and I just leaning on each other. Our relationship is the core of all of it. So during the labor, particularly the more challenging times, we were really leaning on each other, and because we understand each other so well,
Teamwork.
It essentially made it easy to have that teamwork and understand. Like I also use my intuition a lot with some of the decision making. I know Steph so well, so that was probably the biggest thing. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. I would say, in addition to that, I think going back to what we spoke about at the start around the two previous losses, in some cultures they say that miscarriage is a silent birth. So I feel like I'd already given birth twice, and I knew I could do it again.
Nice.
Yeah.
You believed in yourself, Steph.
Yeah. So for me, it was, even though there was a lot of adversity and it was challenging and there were things that came out of field, like I knew we'd gone through hell before. And this was a good thing that was happening, even though it was scary. And, you know, if someone had told this birth story to me 5 years ago and they didn't say, oh, this is going to be your birth story, if I'd heard it, I would have thought, oh, I hope that never happens to me. Like, that sounds awful. But yeah, like, it's just, I think we're just so resilient.
Yeah. And it was incredible seeing how powerful Steph was at that time. It was a bit confronting for me, but it was incredible seeing how like powerful and in control she was of herself. It was so primal. It was amazing, and I've got so much more respect for Steph now as a mother and what she went through. It was just it was an amazing experience. It was very challenging, but that made it all the more rewarding. So yeah, she did.
Wow.
So yeah,
there you go.
We loved the experience. Yeah.
I love that. I often say this, you know, it's not the type of birth that matters, it's what gets activated in the couple. And your story is a classic story of twists and turns and navigating opinions and noise, and we do this and what about this, and all these moving parts that were playing out, and then dealing with a long, unpredictable labor that was starting and stopping, and getting through that together, getting to the point where you needed to ask for help and overcoming any resistance that you had to, say, epidurals and then ultimately cesareans, and looking back and thinking that was an amazing experience shows you very, very clearly that this is a process of growth and the unlocking of potential. And we can't control birth, but we can influence it to a degree. But then at the end of the day, what people need to know is that you actually do have a whole lot of resources inside of you that you haven't even discovered yet. And stories like Steph and Steve is the type of story that shows you exactly how resilient you are, how resourceful you can be, how you can deal with pain and overcome it, how you can end up doing things you never would have dreamed and still get through it. The power of teamwork, the power of coming together and tuning in and getting a sense of what the baby needs, and all of these different experiences that often unfold as a result of pregnancy, birth, and early parenting. There's a great deal of intelligence to that journey, and it's designed to grow us up. And boy, you two got grown up big time. I reckon you got two for the price of one. Two births for the price of one after a big long labour and then a cesarean.
Yeah, and then, well, that's the thing. I say, I joke now that I've experienced all types of birth because I went in simultaneously. I've also had some induction methods, and I've also had a cesarean. So I've had three for the price of one. But
But thank you so much for sharing this story, and I hope those listening are inspired by the power of Steph and Steve, of their beautiful teamwork and their generosity. It's sharing this story so early, and what could have been seen as a very difficult and overwhelming birth, they were able to come through looking very shiny, I might add, and brilliant parents to little Isabel, because she is a hoofer of a boofer, baby. She is thriving. She's in a great paddock. So thank you so much, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Bye.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks.